Okay, kids, let's have some fun. Alright, so the other day I was telling you about the dilemma I was having with all my gas fixture problems. And so today I want to show you what I finally solved and how I got this satisfied. Now, there's a couple things I want you to pay attention to. Let me make this really big so you can follow along. First and foremost, for laser welding and laser cleaning, you have a flow rate of 15 liters per minute to 30 liters per minute flow rate, and pressure at 0.1 to 0.2 megapascal. That's why you need two different devices for your flow meter and a pressure gauge. For laser cutting, you need to set the pressure, no matter what the flow, to 600 kilopascal to 800 kilopascal. Notice it's at a different rate, a fraction of the megapascal, right? So that's why you can use a flow regulator valve for welding and cleaning, but you need a separate pressure regulator valve to do cutting. I wanted to highlight and show you what I finally end up doing for my argon gas fixtures. First off, let's talk about cutting. Cutting involves having a higher pressure, specifically a pressure regulator, and you'll see this one is measured in kilopascals, so kPas. kPas converted to MPas is like a 10-to-1 ratio, right? So kilo to mega. So when it says 0.1 MPa, you're talking 1,000 kPa, right? So this is going to be a little bit easier to measure that granularity at that lower level. The other thing I did here that you'll notice is I put in these quarter-inch tube quick disconnect hose disconnects. These I found rated up to 400 psi, and for what we're doing, we're not going to be getting up that far anyway, so I think we'll be fine on high pressure output for cutting. Now, with respect to welding and cleaning, this is a little bit different of a situation. Now, there's two things you have to take into account here. First, you have to take into account your flow. Now, argon and CO2 has a flow meter here, and like I mentioned before, this is just how much pressure you have in the tank-ish, right? Which, according to this, I've got about 2,000 psi. The next thing here is measuring that, and so what you'll see here is that this is actually measured in cubic feet per hour, but everything Xtool does is in liters per minute. That's okay. So I went through and I asked Copilot, what's the average conversion rate and what are the rates for the 15 to 30 point ranges? And I found a conversion table, and I just marked some numbers in here, so it just gives me a visual representation of where the ball will hop for anywhere from 15 liters per minute to 30 liters per minute. And that allows me to set the flow. Now, in terms of the pressure, these devices are set to go at 50 psi no matter what. So you can't really set the pressure on this. So they recommend you set up a separate pressure regulator, and that's what this is all for, right? So first we would need to open this up to set the pressure to where we need it to be between these bowls. Ideally somewhere between 30 and 60 cubic feet per hour, or between 15 and 30 liters per minute. Then the next thing you need to do is set the pressure. So while that sets the flow, this sets the pressure that you're outputting it. And this is also measured in MPa. So here you can measure this anywhere from 0 to 1 megapascal, and the psi goes from 0 to 150. But remember, this is capped at 50. So the best you'll ever get to be able to do on this is roughly between 2 and 4, which is okay, because for welding and cleaning, you only need to get up to, between 0.2 and 0.4 anyway. So you're going to be maxing it out for that stuff regardless. Now, if you are like me, and you notice here I also set it up with a quick disconnect as well for the tubing, so that way I have a single disconnect here, pop it off, plug it in here, I'm good to go. I don't have to get behind the device every single time to figure out which tube and how to plug the tube and where that goes. I just pop, or pop, and away I go. Now, what makes this interesting is that you would have to open this up so that you get the flow, and then this, pull this down. Alright folks, here's an update. Apparently, I had gotten that all totally wrong. So, here's my pressure regulator, and here's this connection that I got from Home Depot. It's a Husky 1/4 inch to 1/4 inch adapter kit. You can buy it for like $10, I don't know. But that's where I found this. I was able to get that, pop that in there, and I removed the CGA 580 from the flow meter to make the connection with the 1/4 inch NPTs. And then I removed the other flow meter that you saw me using before, and I just popped the quick connect directly to that. And the reason being is this. When I went back and I was trying to figure out why I wasn't able to clean paint, there was a couple things I figured out. One, you got to sort of kind of hold it on an angle if you're going to be doing it on a weld edge. Doing it on like a flat edge really didn't quite really work very well. I guess I need the actual cleaning adapter kit. Maybe I'll order that and see if that works any better. But with respect to doing that in the corner welds of my welding table, but with trying to do this with cleaning the corner edges of the welding table, that's where I was able to identify really you need to have the flow dialed in as well as the pressure dialed in. And so this is why I made these changes. Now we regulate the pressure before we set the flow. That way the pressure is already set at the layer level that we need it to go at, and then we just adapt or adjust the flow up to what it needs to be from there. And then it'll pass through at the pressure rate and the flow that you have set for those in combination. Now, this makes this a lot more complicated because these measures in here are so tight that to get down to under 30 psi, which is roughly where 0.2 MPa is, you sort of kind of have to get it right at that first dial. So then I ordered a new gauge that will measure from 0 to 100 psi, and then that way I can dial this in a little bit more effectively. That way I can measure this a lot tighter with this pressure regulator and this flow meter, and this will stay solid. I have a second regulator coming in with a new gauge that'll be able to measure this up to 1000 kPa, and I'll show you that once all that comes in. Okay folks, if you like what you saw, you know what to do. Stay tuned. I'm going to be working on building out a new shed because my garage has gotten too small. I'm going to be expanding and building out a driveway and a shed. So stay tuned as I go through those designs.